everyone, Gustavo Mendes here. In this video, we're going to be talking about Nucoda and Phoenix preferences. We're not going to cover every single option, but we're going to give you a general idea of the ones that are good to know when you're first using the software. In this window, we can create different users and as many users as we want. Certain settings can be changed on a per user basis, others are general settings. So we're going to create a new, type my name, click on OK. The project window is going to ask us to set up the cache and proxies folder. We're going to ignore this for now, and we're going to set that up in a little bit. So if you go to the Preferences button, click on it here on the left side, we have several tabs: General, Capture Conform, Color, Memories Compare, Monitoring Video I/O, Rendering, Avid Interop, and Project Storage. And here, Project Storage, we can actually change the folder location for caches and proxies. There's a quick setup button. We're going to do that later, so I'm going to cancel it, and we're going to go back to the General tab. In the General tab, there are a few options that are good to know. You have the choice to not import audio files from movie files. So if you only have scratch audio on a ProRes or a DNX file, for example, or if you just don't need any audio from files imported into the project, just turn this off and you will only import the video tracks. While you're working, you have the choice to keep the focus of the effects per shot or matching between shots. So every time you change a shot, it will go to the exact same effect, or it will remember the last effect you actually used on that shot. One thing that's important, if you have the option for the extended formats, you can choose those formats to be loaded first or last, or to never be checked. This is a paid option in terms of licensing, and it will actually work with some more esoteric type of files that you may or may not need to use. So if you have that option, just choose if you want to load those files first or last when it's being checked. The Capture, Conform, and Edit tab has a few options related to those subjects. So you actually have a way to auto-assign name for the files that you're bringing in, so you can pre-pan file name, append the file name, or ignore the file name. And you can choose how many folders up and how many folders you want to add to the name. Same thing with the library creation folders. Here you have the option to not create any folders, and you can just manually create the structure you want. You can actually create folders based on tape name, folders, or folders hierarchical. So this will follow the folder structure you have on your drive, and you can decide how many folders up it will actually create and how many folders it will add while it's creating. And you can start from select folders if you want. And while you're doing your conform, you can capture by time code or key code using first, second, header, or the file name in case if you have image sequences. And you can also do a match name using tape name, film name, or clip name using file header or the file name, and you have to decide if that's the root of the folder or if you need to look for a certain number of folders up. The Color tab has options for you to change your trackball orientation. You can change how many printer points per stop, and you can change what's the number that's going to be used for printer neutral. We also have a way to change how you do your show when you're trying to show your alpha for a qualifier, for example, using different colors in inside and outside area. And you can actually change your default keyer input. So while you're doing the keyer, you can choose exactly where you want to be using the input from. And you have different keyer modes. You have different keyer filters for blur and median. We have different luma ranges, and we have different curve ranges as well. We're not going to talk about color scaling right now. This is a different topic and a different video. But we have full range, video empty, scene log, video log, and ACES. And we also have different options for the video output for full range, SDI full range, and video range. The Memories tab has an option for you to display ungraded shots as grayscale. You can also decide how you're going to generate your thumbnails from first, middle frame, or last frame. You can change the way that your memories update, if it will change automatically when you do a grade, or if you want to manually update your memories. And you can change how you do your default compare source. We have very different ways to actually do compares, and we're going to talk about that when we're talking about timeline and comparing. You have different options for export formats from DPX, JPEG, TIFF, TGA, and EXRs. And you can choose your mode for big or little endian, and all these options will change depending on the format you choose. Compare modes, there are several. From split, dual, we have difference, subtract, difference red. We're going to talk about them separately as well when we're talking about timeline and grading and memories. And we also have different ways when you're doing your compare. You can do your split using vertical or horizontal, and how you do your grid for checkerboards. You can change for different options. Monitoring video I/O refers to basically how you're going to do your dual screens and how you're going to set up your Blackmagic or AJA card. Here you can turn on dual display, and it will offer different ways for you to actually work with that. So you have timelines on the left and MEMS and PIC on your right screen. You have timeline and PICs and MEMS on your right, and you have timeline PICs MEMS. So each one here that you choose will actually show you how it will actually look on your screens. So the interface works with dual monitors, and you cannot separate the interface in more than 2 monitors. And you have to choose where your timeline will be, on the right side or left side, and this will be shown here as well. You have a way to show your output warnings related to delays and how bright you want things to be written while you have your outputs on screen. And another thing that's important is you need to turn on your video I/O card. So if you have one, you need to turn it on, and the options will be shown here. And if you don't have one, just turn it off. And the option for the GPU to SDI will only work, of course, if you have the I/O card. And this will give you a lot of different ways to show the image on your actual screen. So you can actually have a lot of the information tools that we have, like scopes and everything else, to be shown on your actual main screen, that your client screen. So this is an option that you have that you need to test and figure out where and when you want to use it, but this can be turned on and off while you're inside the project as well. You can also choose to have a priority format, and you can change how your audio capture is actually, in terms of quality, how it's being captured. And there's a next button that has even more options related to HDR modes, ZOTFs, how is your external color here. There's a lot of changes that you can do. You can sync DVI and the SDI using your GPU to have a better sync between the screen and your actual video output that's going on. And these settings normally keep it on default, but if you check the user manual, there are different ways that you can test this out. On the rendering tab, we have different options to export DPXs for big endian and little endian. Big endian, which is the Cineon format, has better compatibility. And you can actually choose your color bit depth. So from 10-bit all the way to 16-bit RGB, and we have 10-bit YEV as well. This whole section down here related to your config of the machine and how we get the number of cores that we have for renders and everything else. You take a look at the manual. This is very specific depending on your configuration. So we normally config this automatically, but you can take a look at the manual and figure out if there's something specifically you want to change. And we do pre-allocation of frames while we're rendering. So we normally use 20 frames ahead to avoid fragmentation. GPU layer controls are related to how we use the GPU and how many layers we can process before doing caches. There's a whole section as well in the manual. We're going to talk about this later. And you can actually change your cache format. So if you're working on projects that are 8, 10, or 16-bit, you actually can do DPX, including black and white DPX, and you can do ProRes for caches, which is great. It saves a lot of space and it has great quality. But if you're doing half float, in the case for ACES, you can either do uncompressed, you can do DWAA or DWAB. The difference here is byte size, and they are lossy, compressed EXR files, but they have great quality. So if you just need this for playback, they're really good options. The Avid interrupt section, it's basically used if you're doing a workflow with an Avid network. So you can choose what's the folder for Avid media files, you can change directories, you can do an MXF backup folder, you can rename the creating folder, and you actually have all the information that you need to fill out if you're using the Nexus, for example. So if you're not using the Nexus, don't worry about the section. The project storage section actually gives you the option to change how we store your projects. Keep it on SQLite. You have an option to change autosave intervals. You have the backup autosave as well. You can change this in hours, the other ones in seconds, and the maximum number of full backups. The safe mode basically does not open your last composition. So if you're having problems with a specific composition that might be corrupted, just turn on open projects in safe mode. And as I said, we're gonna here change where the cache and proxy creation folders are. I'm gonna click on quick setup, and I'm gonna say that my media location, it's gonna be on one of my local drives here. I have a media drive and I have a Nucoda folder. So I'm just gonna click on OK. And for my project location, I'm just going to go to my projects drive, click on Nucoda, and click on OK, and it will create all the other folders inside. I would just recommend you create a Nucoda or Phoenix folder, depending on what you're using. Click on OK, and it's all set up, and that's it. And we're ready to create our first project.